Hi, my name is Sean McCormick. I'm from Open College Network Northern Ireland, and I'm here to give you a quick presentation on units, explanation of what they are. So launching the presentation, if we deal with page 1, we'll just talk a bit about what is a unit. In short, a unit is just a quick summary of the learning that an individual will attain through the unit. Units are categorized by credits. Credits are the length of the program. 1 credit nominally equaling to 10 hours worth of learning. It's important to note also that 10 hours is total learning hours, i.e. not just face-to-face delivery with the teacher in front of the class, but also tutorials, work outside class, research, reflecting on the information that's provided by the tutor, i.e. the total learning involved in order to get the student to understand at the level as described within the unit. On to the next slide in the presentation, we'll talk about the key information you as a tutor need to understand. First and foremost, obviously, is the title. That's a short descriptor of the learning the student would have attained by completing the learning. The next being the level of achievement. And in your support packs, we will have given you a list of the descriptors documenting what is meant by the levels of learning. We'll talk about levels. In your support materials, you will have details of the levels at which units are pitched at. This goes from entry level up to level 3, as the name implies, entry level being very much more basic, fundamental understanding, versus level 2 and 3, moving up in terms of the complexity and difficulty of the learning, but also from the perspective of the learner's participation in that. They should be more self-directed in their learning, and conversely the role of the assessor educator moves into being much more of a mentor facilitator than an entry level, where it is very much about just imparting information to the individual. The credit value, as we touched before, determines the length of the program. 1 credit, nominally 10 hours, 2 20 hours, 3 30, and so on. Typically most students will be around the 1 to 4 credit mark. And then the learning outcomes and assessment criteria. For each learning outcome, which breaks down the learning into chunks of learning in short descriptors, that describes that piece of learning that will contribute to the overall learning within the unit. There will be 1 or more assessment criteria that will give the tutor information on how to structure assessments at an appropriate level to ensure that the learner has achieved that learning outcome, and by achieving all the learning outcomes, then achieve the learning within the unit. The other bit of important information within a unit is the assessment strategy. Usually that's on the 2nd page of a unit, and we'll detail the various strategies that are either mandatory or optional for a tutor to use in terms of assessment. That may be role play, group discussion, written descriptions, tutor log, etc. And typically that's in the form of a table where we indicate what's prescribed, i.e. mandatory, or what's optional, indicated by an O. It's also worthwhile noting that if there's no indicator beside that, that doesn't mean that the tutor can't use that assessment. It's just that the curriculum developer nominated those assessment strategies that he or she felt were appropriate to the learning in that unit. So moving on to slide 5. We'll look at dealing with an actual unit and pulling out of that the key information that you as a slide 5, which is using teamwork skills. If you have a look at it, obviously the title implies the learning, what the knowledge and skills that the student should have achieved at the end of that. And we'll go through the other important information that we've talked about previously and pull out of this unit what we need to know before going into the class. Next is the level 2. So that implies that the learning in this unit is going to be a bit more complex. There's going to be a certain degree of autonomy of the learner. There'll be an expectation of a higher order level of understanding by the student, and in terms of discussion and assessments, that should be reflected. The credit value is 3, so normally around 30 hours typically a tutor should be planning for in terms of the total learning that a student should be undertaking. The next 2 lines relate to the NOCN unit code and the accredited unit number. Those are numbers that indicate that the unit is accredited learning, and in this case nationally accredited. And also was it the accreditation number allows Open College Network to attach learners to that unit on its database and hence certificate against it. And then we go into the actual learning. There are 4 learning outcomes, each with 2 assessment criteria. So in terms of the delivery, say for example being able to contribute to the setting of group goals and agree to a group contract, how we might assess that is indicated by the assessment criteria. And similarly for the other 3. You may have noticed as well within the learning outcomes, just below them in brackets there's some coding. What that relates to is where this unit, being a national unit, has been mapped to national occupational standards. So that's the core learning that an individual needs to undertake. If we move now to the next page, if we move to slide 6, that deals with the assessment strategy within this unit, we see that group discussion and oral question and answer are prescribed, i.e. mandatory. What that means is that you as an assessor need to utilise these assessment strategies in at least one of the learning outcomes you're delivering. Within the assessment strategy as well, it indicates that written description and reflective log and diary are optional. What that means is the curriculum developer has identified these 2 assessment strategies as fitting well with the overall learning within the unit. But it's important to stress that that's, as the name implies, optional. Quite equally, the educator may decide that for his or her learners, role play, for example, is a more appropriate assessment strategy and can utilise that as long as the appropriate documentation and evidence is generated from that. So there we have it, how we've managed to glean the key information that we need as an educator from the unit. You'll see in your support materials there's a short self-assessment that'll just let you double check that you've captured all the important information that you need to formulate a learning plan, and was it for your students in terms of delivery, Open College Network accredited curriculum to develop and capture that important documentation and make up that student portfolio that's important for Open College Network to certify your students as successfully completing. So I wish you all the best with your learning. If there's anything that raises any questions with this presentation, either just rewind and replay, or otherwise just contact Open College Network Northern Ireland itself and speak to one of the staff there. It'll be more than happy to help with your queries. Otherwise, good luck, and we'll talk to you again.